there, I'm Tori Beach, a solo wedding videographer, and we are back again with another episode of I Do's and Don'ts, where I sit down with other wedding professionals to talk about the do's and don'ts of all things weddings. Today, I'm so excited to be sitting down with my friend Shawnae, who is a caterer. Hey Shawnae, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
I am so excited to talk to you about this stuff. Your food is so good. It's just delicious. But let's talk a little bit about your business. So what is the name of your company and how long have you guys been in the wedding industry?
Yeah, so we're Pan and Cake Catering company. And together, Josie Patterson and I, she's our executive chef. And we have been in the wedding industry for about 3 years now.
Oh, okay.
We started in May 2018 with Pan and Cake.
When I see who's catering, and it's you, I'm like, yes, I'm going to eat well tonight. And it's going to be so yummy. It's very selfish of me to say that, but it's true. It's definitely something to think about. You shared with me some really great do's and don'ts, so I want to dive right into that. A very common topic, which I think every couple needs to hear from every single vendor, is that you need to think about your budget when you come to your vendor. One thing that we have been saying from listening to literally every single vendor is, come to us with your budget. We won't be offended. I'm assuming that's probably similar with you.
Yes, absolutely. We can accommodate a wide range of budgets. We just need to know what that is.
Right. Now, one thing that you had said in kind of juxtaposition with knowing your budget is that that also kind of forces you to prioritize what's most important to you. So talk to me about what you mean by that.
Yeah, sure. So I think that it's important to come with your one thing, right? So if you want your one thing to be a show-stopping 9-tier wedding cake, right? You're going to have to pull from another area of your night to make that happen. If your one thing is that you want to serve filet mignon plated for dinner, then maybe you scale back on your appetizers. If you want to do, if you want your cocktail hour to be kind of the highlight of the show and you want to do all out, then maybe you serve a chicken entree and you're able to kind of pull. So when you're thinking about your wedding reception meal, you kind of have 3 areas that you're considering. You have your cocktail hour appetizers, your main course, and then your desserts.
Okay.
Pick one for your main thing and then scale back the other 2.
Yep.
A really big decision you're going to have to make, especially in light of COVID, is your service style.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So we offer 4 different service styles.
Okay.
The first and kind of most basic traditional is going to be your wedding buffet line, right?
Yep.
We have pivoted this due to COVID to kind of think lunch line style, and it's not our favorite, but it is safe. We have our black tie wait staff serving from the buffet line.
Right.
In that case, you have one person touching a spoon instead of 200 people going to touching the same spoon. And a buffet option is going to be your best budget option. If you're on a budget, go with a buffet. Things you're going to need to know. If you want kind of a mid-range, a family style service is really great. Style is where we plate up a platter of each item. So you'll have a big bowl of your mashed potatoes, a big platter of your chicken dishes or whatever. And then we bring that to the table and it's passed around the table.
Right.
From there, you have maybe 10 people handling it instead of the 200 again as well. So it's a good, safer option for people concerned about food safety and COVID, especially because you're going to have people sitting together that know each other for the most part.
Sure.
The kind of highest tier option that we offer is a plated service, and it is going to be your safest because you have one person handling it and nobody else touches your plate, right?
Right.
we do need a lot more staff to do a plated service, and so it
Yeah.
is the most expensive option. But it is also very nice to have every guest have their own plate of food.
Yeah.
So, and then the last option is kind of, we call it stations, and
Oh,
it's
yeah.
yeah, so it's kind of like a buffet, but rather than a line, the stations are spread out through the room.
Yeah.
And it's more of a grazing. You can be up and down. It's interactive. People aren't just going through the line, but it's kind of like an elevated cocktail hour experience for your main course.
Yeah. Yeah.
Knowing your one thing and then knowing your service style is really going to help when we put together a menu for you that's going to fit within your budget.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I love, honestly, I mean, I've seen all of those options, and they're all really great options, but it does really change on like what you want your feeling of the night to be. Yeah, and it's really nice that you have so many different options, because again, you know, budgeting is a huge thing with weddings, because if you don't budget, you will get out of control really fast. So knowing that you have all these options to help them still get what they want, but to be able to stay within their budget is super helpful. Now, one thing that you mentioned, though, which kind of goes into our next do, is, you know the size of your venue if you're going to have like a buffet. But that's like a total do for you, is know your venue. But that goes beyond just size. So talk to me about what it is that you want them to look at.
So once you have a venue secured, it's really helpful for us to know what is available to us at the venue in regards to the kitchen space. So, for example, if you decide to have a wedding in the woods with no running water, we're going to be a little bit more limited on the menu items that we can offer, versus if we have a full on-site kitchen at a wedding venue.
Yep.
Certain menu items, for example, risotto. Risotto doesn't hold well, so risotto is out for wedding in the woods. But if we have a stove and a range available to us in the venue, then we can make your risotto happen.
So when you say it doesn't hold well, that means it doesn't hold well in like coming from your catering kitchen to the venue.
Right. Okay. And so catering is mobile food, right? Okay. That's kind of the definition of it. It's mobile food. And when we prep all of these items at our kitchen, we have to transport them to wherever it is we are serving. And we do that with hot holding equipment.
Okay.
And so the food is cooked, it's being held hot in an equipment. And sometimes that food can sit in those boxes and steam and overcook.
Okay.
Your risotto then becomes mushy if it's sitting too long.
Gotcha.
Steaks might become well done versus if it's medium.
Okay.
If we have ovens, then we can serve your fillets at a nice medium rare.
Right.
If we don't, you're going to get a well done steak. And that's something that you're going to have to be aware of and okay with if you have your heart set on a certain menu item.
Right. Yeah. I didn't even think about that, with things just like overcooking on their way over. I think that's one thing for couples to think about too, is that when your vendor says, hey, this isn't gonna transport well, you need to trust them and that they know what they're talking about. Because otherwise you may end up with sticky risotto, and you don't want that. So I actually want to jump into some of our don'ts, because you have some really, really great ones. And this first one that you talked about, I think, is just a really nice gesture that couples should be conscious of. But that is, don't forget about the dietary restrictions of your guests. So talk to me about what that would look like for you on your side of catering.
Absolutely. So we always ask our couples if they have any guests that have dietary restrictions, and it's a nice gesture if you include a little space on your RSVP card that asks this. Yeah. Especially if you're doing a plated meal, you'll sometimes see the little box check for chicken or steak, right? Which do you want? And then any dietary restrictions. So we're seeing a lot more and more of people requesting vegan entrees or gluten-free entrees, dairy-free, egg-free. And it is a nice gesture for those guests to be accommodated. Again, because we're not a restaurant, and so we can't just whip something together that doesn't have a certain ingredient in it in our kitchen. We have to prepare that in advance and plan for it. And so we are more than happy to accommodate any dietary restriction, as long as we know what those are. And you can just move those to your caterer with your final guest count. So you can say we have 80 meals, and 3 of those are going to be gluten-free and vegan. Okay. And then that way everyone has a chance to eat an amazing meal.
Right. Yeah, because I always, like, I know a lot of my friends who have, and I have family members who have very strict dietary, needs. And it's really sad when you go to events and they're just like, they either bring their own. I've seen that. I've seen people bring their own food. And, that's just sad. So I love that you actually have that as something that you ask your couples to think about, because your guests are going to feel so well taken care of and so thought about. And that's huge. And in creating a wonderful night for everybody. And, everybody gets to feel like they're a part of the same thing, instead of like, oh, well, I'm the other who has a gluten intolerance or something.
There's nothing worse than having to sit at the table and look at all this amazing food being passed around. And
hey, that's a great segue into a don't that you have. And that's, don't forget about your vendors in your guest list. That is something that is in some contracts. It is in mine that I am fed a meal if I work a certain amount of hours. But talk to me about why that's a don't, as far as like, don't forget about your vendors in your guest list.
Right. And we've seen this so much where brides will give us a final guest count and not include their officiant and their DJ and their photographer. And we typically plan for this because we know that it's something that is forgotten. Right. And we'll usually ask too, how many vendors do you have? Because they need to be included in your final guest count. But it's really important when you need to know that number. That number is so important because, again, we're not a restaurant and we can't just go make more food if 20 extra people show up, right? So you need to really have your guest count nailed down, in addition to any vendors, in addition to any kids. So we really need that solid number in order to make your event successful and make sure everyone gets fed.
Right. And I will say, as a vendor, it is so appreciated when feeding us, I think it should be non-negotiable. Some of us who have been there for, 10, 12 hours, whatever it'll be. And I will say, regardless, being fed is important. I love it when I also get the option to eat what the caterer has made for the guests. Now, I know that is not the case everywhere, because sometimes it's just way too expensive and that you need to do like a boxed dinner for your vendors, which is, again, totally fine. I'm just happy to be eating. I will say I feel very loved, very special when I get to eat what everybody else is eating, because, oh man, after a day of like working my butt off from morning till dinner time, sitting down to an excellent meal is just, it's really, really nice. And again, like I said, when I notice that you're catering, I'm like, oh, please, I want to be eating their food tonight.
And that's something that we need to remember too, is to eat. Event days are so crazy for us. And sometimes we'll go all day and I'm like, I have been around food all day and I have not eaten anything. No wonder I feel dizzy.
Right. Yes. Oh, Shawnae, these are so good. And I really, really hope people who are watching and listening to this, that like, take this advice and move forward with it, because it will be so helpful as you are planning for your day. And, Shawnae, you are an incredible vendor to have, because, not only is food important, but good food is important. And I know that a lot of people will remember their meal. You know, it's like, oh, we might not remember what, you know, the music they played or the centerpieces, but I remember I had a killer meal at this wedding. So like, really think about who you're going to hire. And then again, you know, like you were saying, it all comes down to budget. And I'm pretty sure every vendor wants to work within your budget because we want you to work with us. So,
you know, we love food and we want to be a part of your day. And yeah, you know, the amazing thing about food is that there are so many options.
Yes.
And we are able, you know, ask your caterers too. Most of them will present a menu to you, but the amazing thing again about not being a restaurant is that your caterer is only cooking food for your day. So anything can be changed, anything can be modified. Say, hey, like this menu item looks great, but can we sub this sauce or can we change this or can we add this?
Yeah.
And the great thing about catering is that it is fully customizable.
Right.
And you know, you can create these custom menus that will be kind of, you know, that star of the show.
Yep. I totally agree. Oh, Shawnae, thank you so much for joining us. It was so fun talking to you, and maybe we'll have you back on to talk a little bit more.
Absolutely. I'd love to. Thank you.
Yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. If you have any questions about what we talked about, or if you have any specific topics you'd like to hear about, or even from a specific wedding professional, please feel free to leave those in the comments below, as we definitely take cues from what you guys want to hear, and we want to bring you that content. Thank you guys so much for listening, and stay tuned for the next one.